Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is bigger than us, to mystical experiences, to awakenings, to realizations, and to that really special life journey that your soul has planned for you in this lifetime. And you get to, like an Easter egg hunt, get to find all the gold pieces as you go along in the discovery process. And I'm your host, Kerri Hummingbird, and I love to help people either start that journey if they haven't really started that journey yet, to really realize they're more than just a body with some bones and teeth, um, or if they're really on the path and they want to like go deeper into it, because I love going to the bottom of the ocean. It's my favorite place to be. So today I get to have another great guest on my show. Welcome, Lance Baker. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Lance is joining us from down under. He has a company called Branches of Healing, and he has a really amazing story of healing, which I'm going to let him share with you about how he got started through really painful migraines, and that unlocked a lot of awakening for him finally when he learned how to do Reiki. So we're going to let him tell that story. But I want to say, ever since then, he has become a best-selling author on hypnosis. He's had a pain-free life. And instead of working a corporate job and just making money, he gets a chance to help make people's lives better through Branches of Healing, which I totally resonate with that. It's a beautiful thing to make people's lives better, including ourselves. And I really want to encourage you guys to check out, like, just listen to his story. And I just received a healing experience from Lance right before the show. So I got to connect with a really deep inner aspect of myself, which was super powerful to experience. His, I mean, I can't even explain it exactly, except that it spoke through my hands, like it like said yes and no and I don't know and all of these, and I was not moving my hand; it was moving itself and answering questions. I could feel like this connection with this part of me that wanted to come up and speak, and come out, and it actually did speak. Lance even got opened an opportunity for this part to speak, and it said, "I love you," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it loves me." That's great because it's inside me, so I hope it loves me. So, it's really beautiful. I'm going to be practicing this, and you guys are going to get access to a video that explains how to do this for yourselves. But I totally recommend, booking a session first with Lance to check it out. So, anyway, back to the show. I, Lance, that was so powerful. Thank you so much for doing that for me.
Happy
I
to.
really
That's what I
appreciate
do.
it. Yeah, it's gorgeous. And so tell us a little bit, tell the audience a little bit about how you got started on this journey of your own path to becoming a healer. I know you had intense, painful migraines, but tell us a little bit more about that journey, and then we'll get into, your teachings and what you've
Yeah.
realized.
I had a long, slow road that was not fun. With hindsight now, I can appreciate it, but it took a long time even after that to begin to appreciate it. So a long time ago now, I had for I had a blocked ear. Like, when your ear needs to pop, like your ears need to pop when you've been on an airplane. One ear had been like that, has been for about 20 something years.
20 years with an ear that wouldn't pop?
Yeah.
That's enough to drive you insane.
It was driving me very insane. And so I went to ears and throat doctors after a few of them. One of them decided to get an MRI scan of my ear to see what was up. And he held these scans up afterwards, and there was a scan of my ear, and he goes, "It's all normal, look at that." And he holds a scan up of my whole head, and he goes, "I'm an ear, nose and throat doctor, but this is not meant to be there." And he points to a spot that's as big as my fist. It's we're metric in Australia, so it's 8 by 6 centimeters. I don't know what that is in inches. I think that's about 3 by 3 by 2 roughly. I don't know.
I don't know.
uh, but it's
It's a big
a
mass
huge
for
thing
your
right here.
for your head. Your head's not all that big, so.
No, yes, that's a huge chunk of my head. So he said, that's not meant to be there. He goes, "I can't tell you anything about it because I'm an ear, nose, throat guy. That's brain." And I'm like, scared. I go to a few different neurosurgeons, and I went to the one who was the best one in the Southern Hemisphere. And he said, "Easy fixed. I can solve that." we'll just do this operation and be no problems. So I signed up for that operation. I remember how long I had to deal with this migraine because I signed up for the operation the day after my birthday was when I had it done. And until then, I'd had migraines usually about every month. I wish I'd tracked it because I'd be curious to know if it lined up with the moon cycle. But I just know it's roughly once a month I'd have these migraines. But I had this operation. I wake up from the operation. I have a killer migraine. This did not go away for 9.5 years.
9.5 years of a migraine.
24/7, nonstop, just boom. Not a second's reprieve in that 9.5 years. It was varying, like pain scale 1 to 10. The best I ever felt over that 9.5 years was a 3. Most of the time, I was sitting around a 5-ish. I got to a new level of what I thought was a 10 at least a dozen times. And it got to what they call suicide migraines, where you feel like the only way to end this is to end this. So it was quite traumatic. And I had periods where I tried everything Western medicine had to offer. I tried all the different sorts of drugs that were around to offer. Even with all that, nothing took it below a 3. Like I could make a giant cocktail of drugs and get high as a kite and it would still be pounding away.
Wow.
The best things that worked were things that just knocked me out so that my brain could do whatever it needed to do so I could wake up feeling a 4 instead of a 10 or something like that hours later. So it was quite traumatic and painful, and I didn't think my life would get anywhere. I struggled through it. I still worked pretty much every day. I held a full-time job the whole time, and I would only take time off when I was at like a 9 or a 10, and I just struggled through it. I didn't like having people feel guilty and pity and all that sort of stuff. So most people had zero idea I was even going through it. I just would tell people who needed to know, like my direct employers, and that was it. And at the beginning of the 9th year, so on my the year I had my birthday after it had been 9 years, like my birthdays were depressing because next day means, it's been 9 years of this migraine. I made this dedication to myself. Okay, I'm 33 this year. This year I'm going to make a change. I'm going to try everything again, because at about year 5, I just gave up. I barely had any drugs even. I was like, my liver's going to die if I keep doing painkillers. So if it gets to a 9 or a 10, I'll take stuff. Otherwise, I'll just deal. And I'd lost hope. Okay, so year 9, I'm like, okay, we're going to give it another shot. I'll try everything again. And no matter how weird something is, I'm going to try it. So I think there was about a month later, somebody mentioned Reiki to me. I'm like, okay, let's try it. One of my mate's girlfriends did it. She was spooked by it from something that happened, and she was like, well, I don't practice it anymore. It's outside of my field of expertise and comfort. So find someone else. I'm like, okay. And so months later, I actually met somebody who gave me their card. And on the back of it, it said they did Reiki. I've got an episode on my podcast with this lady where we talk about part of that. But so I booked in for her and I had a session. And I'll be honest with you, my view was this was a bunch of hokey. I was wasting my time. And this whack job woman was stealing my money. And she was just sitting in the corner, reading a book, playing with her tarot cards or something. This was just me pulling $90 out of my wallet and setting it on fire. And that's what I was laying there imagining. Till I felt this thing in my head move. Now, I'd been hyper aware of the feeling in my head. So when this moved, I was like, oh, she just did something. This is weird. Okay. I didn't really feel much better, I'll be honest. I might have dropped 1 on the pain scale. I slept better that night, though. And the next day, I felt a little bit better again. I'm like, okay, I'll book in again. She did something. I'll give it a try. I've wasted 3 times this on just seeing one doctor before for 1 session. So we'll do it. And so I went a few times, and every time I felt just a little bit better. And it became something that I was like, well, I'm going to just keep doing this. Each week I'm going to go. And I'd also started meditating, and I was using float tanks for meditation. Had no idea how to meditate. I tried listening to guided meditations before, and most of them speak visually of see this, see yourself doing this, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a visual imaginator. So I close my eyes. Somebody tells me to see something. I see black. So I figured I can't do meditation. I've thrown it away. I was like, okay, I need to learn how to meditate. So I sat down and I Googled, learn to meditate, Newcastle this weekend. Newcastle's where I live. And no meditation class come up. Now, if I do that now, people like, I come up. That's number one. But the Buddhist Center comes up. There's people like me. There's lots of meditation things in this town. And there was back then. None of that showed up. But a Reiki 1 class did. That was on that Saturday.
Isn't that handy?
Oh, that's interesting. And I remember the night before, I'd had a dream I was doing Reiki on my mate's wife, who was a science teacher at the time, who had even less belief in that stuff than me. And I still didn't even know what Reiki looked like because I had my eyes closed and she never touched me. But I knew the dream I was doing Reiki. I was like, okay. So I thought, well, it's like Thursday night. It's on Saturday morning. They're probably full, but I'll send them an email. Do you have a spot? Didn't hear back till Friday night. It was like 11 o'clock Friday night. They got back to me. Yeah, there's a spot. So I was like, okay, I'll go. And it said you could do it yourself. And I didn't know you could do it on yourself back then either. And I thought, well, yeah, I can top up in between seeing Leander, and I might gain a little bit more each time. So away I went. And I go to this Reiki class, and this bearded hippie gives me a hug as I walk in the room, and my skin crawls and I push him away. I'm like, I'm not a hugger, dude. Nope. Now I'm the weird.
You're the weird hugger now.
Hugs everybody in the room. Weird the way things happen. And so we did the Reiki class, and from the moment of that attunement, I could feel this energy in my hands, and my mind was blown. Like once I could feel that energy in my hand, I was like, this is it. This is what the universe is. This is what God is. This is the energy of everything I've been. This is something different. And so I was excited. And so I went home and I practiced a lot. Now, they told us that the more you practice, the better your connection is. So I went in secret. The only person who knew at the time was my wife at the time that I was going, and she thought I was a lunatic. And I was just going to be like, yeah, I'm just secretly do this thing for myself. And they said, well, to amplify this, to build that connection more so it works better for you, it's going to work better if you do it on some other people for the next couple of weeks. Okay. I can do it on other people for 2 weeks just to be selfish and do this. So I'd put some things out to some friends, and every second day I did it on somebody else. And all the time through that first couple of weeks, I was doing the energy ball and practicing that. I think I spent about half hour and an hour on my own head trying to heal that, but not much because I just got distracted going, playing with the energy and healing other people. Now, I don't know when it happened, but sometime in that first week and a half after that class, that migraine was gone. I wasn't trying to make it go. It was just gone. I just noticed it was gone and went, it's not there. And I was like, it's gone for a little bit. This is amazing. I wonder when it's come back. And I presumed this was in the morning before work. I thought it's going to come back by my lunchtime. It didn't come back. Didn't come back the next day. Didn't come back the day after. It was just gone.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, because with channeling Reiki, you bring it in through the top of your head, into your heart and out through your hands. That it was stopping off along the way every time I practiced, every time I worked on somebody. It's like, oh, you need this healed. Now, I have had brain scans and this thing is still in my head. It hasn't physically changed my body, but I have not been in pain since. I've pushed myself and done things that have given me a migraine for a brief time, but I've stopped, healed myself, and that's gone away. But to get that is an extreme. Like before, mowing the yard would give me a migraine for days. Sleeping on the left side of my head where there's a hole from the operation would give me a bad migraine. It would set me up for a few bad days. Now I'd have to mow my whole block. Like not my house, the block of 20 houses before I'd be feeling that point. So yeah, it was life-changing to say the least.
Yeah, that's amazing. And do you think it was because of the energy coming down through you that was healing it? Or do you think it was because of all the giving you were doing and creating good chi, or all of it?
I think it was all of it, but I think as you do Reiki, it's going to stop off on yourself. And it's like, well, to give it to these other people, it's got to heal me first so that I stop absorbing it, I guess. And it just kept going. And so I went from doing this in secret to being very public about it. And my let's just do one Reiki class in secret changed to doing Reiki 2, doing Reiki Master, and from just, let's do this for myself to I teach Reiki 1 every month to make sure people like who I was have that opportunity. Reiki 2 multiple times a year. I've trained Reiki Master, so I put it out there as much as possible. I'm known as the Reiki guy of this town. I was meant to be the guy who was just going to secretly do this weird thing.
Yeah, now you're way out there in the internets talking about Reiki.
Yes, yeah. I have a podcast where I talk about Reiki and hypnosis and different weird, wonderful things.
Yeah, well, so were you doing Reiki when you were doing the session with me, or was that primarily hypnosis?
That was just a thing like hypnosis. It's not quite hypnosis because you weren't in a trance. You were awake. You were in the room with me and this other part of you. And so I was just having direct communication with the part of you that had been programmed by narcissists. And
yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because you have a specialty there, don't you?
Yeah. So that technique is called the Swan. I didn't invent that. That comes from one of my mentors, Bob Burns. He's a hypnotherapist in Scotland. And I work with it a lot. And as far as I know, I work with it therapeutically a lot more than anybody else. I do have a book out about how to work with it in a therapeutic way that's on Amazon. So it's called the Swan, and it's a way of getting part of the person's subconscious to move down into their arm. And I give it a way of giving feedback to me of communication. So it'll have some sort of movement of the hand or a finger to show me a yes, to show me a no, a maybe, and I don't know. For some people, depending on what we're talking about, sometimes I'll give it an option of don't want to say if I'm dealing with some personal, because with this I can do private subconscious healing, where you just think about the issue and I don't even know what I'm talking about and ask it to clear what Kerri's thinking right now and stuff like that. So sometimes I can get it to, it might need to keep a secret. And so I give it that option. But then, as you just experienced, if it's got enough energy there, I can allow it to take it that step further and move from a binary conversation of those closed questions to very open by giving it power of your voice. And you heard a different voice say, I love you. And
Yeah, I did. It was like, it makes me want to cry, but yeah,
well, it did make you cry. The well
it
of
did.
emotions took over you first because of the healing we did with allowing it to have that forgiveness. All it wanted to do was tell you it loved you, which is very understanding. And I had somebody once who came for a session who'd had decades of abuse, of emotional and physical and sexual abuse. And her session was pretty much just that. It was a half-hour session and she healed so much. And all it was the inner child of her that had been abused when she was 4. She thought it was 6, but it told us it was 4. Just thought she was hated by the conscious person. And so set her up to sabotage all the time. And all it needed to do was hear it was loved and to say, I love you. And that was it. That woman was healed and things got amazing for her straight up.
That's amazing. So I was wondering as you were doing it, I was like, well, what part of this is me? I mean, it feels like a really young part because the speech was pretty young,
Yeah.
right? Like it was like probably 2 or 3. Like it was.
Yeah. Most of our subconscious stuff happens in the first 9 years of our life where we get programmed, which is usually by mum and dad who were just running the programs they were given by their mum and dad, from their mum and dad, from their mum and dad. And so most of it is rubbish.
Yeah.
A lot of parents out there from the work I do, I see most people's problems come from their parents. So there's a lot of people parenting that are not skilled to be parents because most people have babies by accident or that are trapped in relationships that are not great, but they don't have the self-worth to get out. And so one parent stuffs the life up for this child. The other way that subconscious learn is with some sort of communication like this method we had, or with hypnosis, or from doing something again and again and again and again over time, or from being told something again and again and again from somebody we've given trust to, like an ex-husband who is a narcissist who tells you rubbish again and again and again, and you buy into that gaslighting. Or like a skill, like most people should resonate with this. Have you ever been driving and wondered where the last few blocks went? Or you've moved house or moved location of work and you're driving and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm halfway to the old work or the old house. That's because your subconscious learnt that behavior and took over that job for you. It's like, Kerri's done this enough. This is my job now. She doesn't need to do it. And so you get into this automatic behavior. I know I drove this one back road to work every day for years. And there was this one little spot in it that I could overtake cars. And because I was usually running late and I didn't drink coffee back then, I was always in a rush. I'd take this spot and I'd overtake somebody pretty much every morning. And so one morning I was in this daisy state driving to work, and I'm driving behind a red Corolla. And then all of a sudden I realize there's like a blue Nissan in front of me. Where'd the red Corolla go? And I look in my rearview mirror and I'd overtaken it on this small little spot on this back windy country road. And I didn't remember it. My subconscious was that powerful. It's like, well, I can not only just drive in between lines, I can overtake people. And it did. So it learnt that behavior and it just did it. And that's what happens when we repeat something again and again and again and again. It learns something. But as you've seen in a 15-minute conversation, we can clear a lot of that and give forgiveness and change a pattern. So that I find it is quite powerful. But how you said this part we were talking to was like a little girl. I think it was, yeah, the little girl that grew up with a mother teaching her bad things. But with this, I have a different view of the subconscious than most people. And I treat it as a parts therapy approach. So most people have heard of it as like Gestalt therapy, but I don't get people to talk to a chair and then sit in a chair and pretend to be mum and talk back. You've got different parts within your mind. So we are not just one person, because you've had conversations with yourself where you've been not only on two sides of a fence, you've been on three or four.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Debated arguments in your
Some
head.
discussion,
All
some
over the
decisions
place.
are hard to make, right?
Yeah.
Because so many competing voices.
And that's it, competing voices inside. And for some people, it's not just competing voices. You might be hearing other as well within that, and be hearing your deceased grandma or whatever behind you talking to you, or your spirit guides. That can play into it, but most of it is internal parts of your personality. So you'll have the part that deals with relationships, the part that deals with work, the part of you that has confidence, the part of you that doesn't, the part of you that got abused from narcissists over the years. The way most people have seen this in action and might understand it is the kids' movie Inside Out, that Pixar movie, where all the characters are inside the little girl's head. So Joy gets lost and the girl gets depressed, and the other characters have got to find that. Or there was a show in the 80s, Herman's Head, that half of the sitcom was set of this guy in his office and his dating life and his home life, and the other half was set on this blank set where there was 4 different characters that were aspects of his personality. And so I talk to each of those aspects of personality and give them individual healing, rather than just put somebody into a trance, demand change from their subconscious as a whole, and hope it works. This way I get that part to give me a chance to say, no, not ready for that. And then I can
Yeah.
find a middle ground point.
Well, it's fascinating because I've known for a while that there's, different, I've done a lot of child healing and things like that to try to get at these pieces and heal them. And one of the things I found in the work that I did with psychotherapy, which I did a couple decades of that, and although I learned a lot about my thought tunnels, I wouldn't say I made a big amount of progress, like in behavioral or whatever, like life change. Like I still felt crummy on the inside. It wasn't until I really learned about energy healing, kind of like what you're talking about, that I finally had a breakthrough and a shift. And I realized that these inner pieces, like a lot of the things even happen in utero. Like you pick up messages from your mother, like in utero. And
Yeah.
like, let's say your mom is really conflicted about having you as a baby, and it's kind of like, this is not a good idea, or I don't really want to do this, or I don't think this is going to be safe, or is worried, or is having like a life experience where there's a lot of stress or chaos. Like you're picking all that up in utero from your mother.
That process I did with you, there's an even stranger thing that I can do with that.
Oh
Where
gosh, now I'm so intrigued. I got to get a session.
well, this we can't do as a session unless you're pregnant,
Oh,
because
dang.
because with this process, and as far as I know, I'm the only one in the world who's ever done this, except for some people in some forums I've shared this with, might have tried it already now, was I've used that to talk with the baby in utero and get feedback from them. So the first time I did it, I didn't know if it was going to work. But I was like, let's just try it. You're like 6 months pregnant. Let's see if we can talk to that baby. And I asked, so not just to use mum's hand and give me a finger signal, to make sure I wasn't talking to mum. I thought, well, I have to fact check this somehow. So I was like, can you kick? Yes. Can you give me 3 kicks right now? Boom, boom, boom. And I put my hand on her stomach and boom, boom, boom.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
And then I checked again at the end. I said, don't kick again till we're finished until I ask. And he did. And kicked again. And I'd asked, I didn't know what to ask him because I was on the spot then. I was like, I've called this child in to talk and I don't know what to ask. So I was like, do you know mum loves you? Yes. Do you know dad loves you? Nope.
Oh,
And I'm like, well, I've met dad and he's excited to have you. He is so happy and he is so in love with you, just like he's in love with mum. Can you look for that from now on? Yep. Do you want to hear mum tell you that? Yep. Mum, can you tell what dad thinks? Oh, dad loves you. Do you believe dad loves you now? Yep. Can you look for that? Yep. That baby turned out to be the biggest daddy's boy later because.
oh, wow. You probably just did a huge generational healing for that child.
Yeah.
By
I've done it.
correcting the pattern before he even came out.
Yeah. And I've done that with half a dozen babies. And usually it's something like mum's had stress and it's picked up on her thoughts or dad's. It's crazy.
Yeah, you'd be amazed like what kids can pick up on, even in utero. They can hear what's going on. They can feel the mother and everything.
And it starts early. So I'd been experimenting with that every chance I had. A pregnant lady who was open to that. Most loved it. One, it spooked her too much, and she wasn't happy about that.
That's so weird. It's I knew that my first one, I knew he was awake in there. Like I knew it. I was talking with him and I knew he was alert and awake in there and that I could feel his spirit. Like I could feel his presence come into my body and be with me. It was so interesting.
Yeah.
And the first one though, I was under a lot of stress. We were renovating our house, which is like a lot of people do when they get their first baby, is they like add more stress by renovating. Okay. Like I did that. Not a good idea. People don't do that. I mean, make do with what you got, until the baby's there. Cause seriously, it adds a lot of stress. I was working a lot of hours and I was earning the money for the renovation and all the noise and hammering and all that was going on. And it's a lot of stress to put a little baby through.
It is, yeah.
Scary for them.
Well, I earlier this year, I got news that I'm going to be a dad again.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we found out very early, like we found out at 5 weeks. And so I spoke with him from then, like day one. And I didn't know if it would work. Way too tiny to give me a kick. I ordered a Doppler, the little heart reader things that you rub mum's tummy with. And so I think this was probably at around 10 weeks by the time that arrived. So to check it was actually him and not mum's subconscious talking about, I said, can you raise your heartbeat to a safe level? And it went up. So it was at a certain point and went up a couple and stayed there for a little while. I was like, can you drop it to a safe level? Can you bring it back to where you're happy with? And I was like, okay, well, that's clear feedback.
Yeah.
Then my partner's like, oh, I didn't know you could change a heart rate with hypnosis. I'm like, yeah. So I did it to myself. I put my hand up. I was like, can you change my heart rate? Yep. And it dropped it down, raised it up. So yeah, it's interesting that a child's subconscious is listening to everything around it from at least the earliest since I've tested is 5 weeks, but I would say from conception.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. It's really interesting too, like the idea of medications with babies and fetuses and things like that, because a lot of moms like get stressed out. Like I had that experience of being really stressed out my first pregnancy, and then after that, I had a big depression and whatever, and I went on these happy pills, to make me mellow because I had to be safe for my kid to be around, so I went on one that they deemed as safe. Who knows, but I was on it. And then I stayed on it because I was afraid of like having the same thing happen again with the second one.
Mm.
So now he's totally mellow and like no problems. The second one, no issues, right? Like he's so mellow. And I'm like, what did it do to his brain chemistry? But he's like, he does not get rattled about things. He's like, my first one gets really rattled about things, right? He's got a lot of emotion. The second one's mellow, like a Zipporello, like seriously, not a problem. So that's also interesting to me. Like the effects, like you really got to like look at the microcosm of your uterus, like your womb with this
Yeah.
baby growing in it as like being very mindful of that. I love that you can communicate with it. That's so great.
Yeah.
How cool is that? So you do a lot of healing with women and trauma from this narcissist pattern and you help them reclaim their confidence is what I'm hearing is a lot of your work that you do.
Yeah, probably the majority of my work is from either minor or major trauma of people that have been in relationships with a narcissist or have had narcissistic mum or dad. That would be, I'd say, 80% of my work at least.
That's amazing. Well, I'm really glad Spirit sent you my way. So
Yes.
thank you, Spirit. So, what are some of the outcomes that you notice, like with yourself from using these modalities, and with your clients? Is there any kind of um, demonstrable outcomes that you notice from people, or that they report back to you?
Yeah. Well, in my own life, uh, my emotional intelligence went from like 0.001 to
You're
in the
so good of you to
90s.
admit that.
So it's drastically changed. I'm the conversation starter about emotional things rather than the reactor, and that's a huge difference. And that is primarily just from that energetic influence of what opening myself up to universal energies has done. It's made me so much more self-aware. But on with my clients, the main thing I notice is that debilitating shackle that narcissists have installed in people breaks. So they get this freedom, they get this trust and self confidence in themselves, and all those old words that rattle around in their head of not deserving things and not being able to do things or capable or whatever start to float away because they disempower that voice inside that's a lie. And they've already proven that narcissist lie in so many things, and consciously they know he was doing stuff to me and was gaslighting me, but that part inside has still got that script and reading it. So I get that part and I rip that script up and I give it something to play with, to have some fun and to enjoy things. So that changes drastically.
What I noticed from my own exploration on this is that, well, I'm very empathic and I'm kind of shapeshiftery, so it took me a while to realize things like that it wasn't me or mine. Like I was like boundaries was always an issue, like setting a boundary and knowing where the boundary is. And and so sometimes some of the things I noticed I took on, I modeled myself, right, in the pattern too. So, like, I love that you also brought in the healing, like, are you willing to release these patterns in yourself? Because I've had to walk that journey of like, oh gosh, like I've acted that way, or I've been sort of heartless about something, or oh, I haven't been in touch with my heart and apologized or seen, the effect on somebody else. Like those been part of my journey too, because of how I
Everybody,
was conditioned.
yeah, it's just normal. I do not know a parent out there who, when they were a teenager or whatever, said, I'm going to do this differently to my parents. And they do. But then later on in their 30s or 40s, they're like, oh my God, I'm just like mom.
Same
I'm just
thing.
like dad. Everybody has it happen because it's a natural part of life, because your parents' job is to program you. You're born without being able to do anything. All you can do is cry, pee, and poop and eat. And they give you the programming of how you interact and deal with life, what you're worthy of, where you're capable of having prosperity in your life, whether that's financial, happy, skills, anything. That's all capped because of your environment growing up. And so what I like to do is just break those false beliefs and install new ones. Because if you thought about what you deserve before, you would have put limits on it. And I'm sure if you thought of somebody who you love and respect, you would have put higher limits of what they deserved than where you'd put for yourself. That's most Western people seem to have this view. And I like to reset it to allow yourself to see you deserving just as much love, joy, and happiness as everybody else.
Yeah, for me, that realization happened through being exposed to people who had a greater level of love
Mm.
and demonstrated a greater level of love than I had experienced. And
Yeah.
being exposed to, communities and places where people have been clearing themselves of conditioning and been more loving, or just grew up more loving. Like there's people that just flat out like grew up more loved, like there
Definitely.
are people like that. I've met them and they grew up more loved. And when you meet them, it's like refreshing and also, I don't know, it provoked a lot of feelings in me, like, dang, I was missing out on a whole lot of love, that I could anyway. Like there's levels of love, there's like greater percentages, I don't know what you want to call it, but there's a greater experience of love that's possible. I think we can all elevate that too through this process
Definitely.
by
And
being
that's what I
open.
notice happens from people who've had sessions like this, is it ripples out. Because it does show. I had one, she was a retiree, so she'd lived a fair chunk of her life already. And I knew her sister as well. And her sister come to one of my classes and she's like, what did you do to my sister? I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I know she came to you for hypnosis. I'm like, well, I can't share that. And she goes, yeah, but she's happy now. She's nice now.
What happened to my sister?
Something changed. And I was like, oh, yeah. Because I just did the little bonus bit at the end, like I did with you, to get this part inside to help show you the everyday joy, love, and beauty more. And it does. And it radiates out and it spreads, because when you're happy, people you interact with absorb that and then they spread that. It snowballs out everywhere. And I've had quite a few people that have come back that have said that little bit made a whole difference for them. Or their family will let me know. Like they'll come in for a session because they'll be like, you did something to my husband and he's so much happier now.
His perceptual windows got shifted into a better
Yeah,
place.
yeah. Switch that reality tunnel to focus on something awesome instead of the rubbish.
I had a ceremony, we do an annual ceremony, the Ceremony of Light, and it's an all-night prayer ceremony. And this year I did it differently. I sat there and I said, you know what, Great Spirit, I want to know what this ceremony would be like for me if I was Peace Chief instead of going down dark thought tunnels. Like I'm willing to experience what it would be like if I was Peace Chief. And do you know I had the best ceremony I've ever had? And it was so beautiful. And I sent prayers to everybody all night long. Like I was just thinking of different people. And I was like, oh, I'm sending prayers to that person. Oh, yeah, prayers and blessings. Oh, prayers and blessings. Like I was just like all night long sending out love and blessings like to everybody I knew. And it was great. I wasn't dwelling on my problems. I wasn't like in my little thought tunnels. I was just like, wow, this is cool. I like being Peace Chief. It's better. It's a lot better.
It is.
Yeah. So many avenues, many avenues to get to healing, but I love your story. I love, just like how much pain you were in and how you were able to cope with that, and then how that expanded your,
Mm.
your life, because you didn't give up and you found peace at the end of all that, and you're a light in the world.
Yeah. Well, now I can appreciate that journey because it helps connect to people who have had chronic pain. And I know, well, I was just too stupid and blockheaded to try things that would have worked at the beginning. I remember in the first year, somebody gave me an acupuncturist card and I
And you
laughed.
ignored it.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not doing that wacky stuff. That might have helped had solved it back then. But I know if it did back then, it wouldn't have been as important to me that I wouldn't have followed it through. And I wouldn't be here to be able to teach people healing and hypnosis all the time now, and to have a full-time clinic where I give sessions to people either in person or over the internet like we just did. So I see the value in what it did for everybody else in the world, and I really appreciate and enjoy and love my life now where I didn't before. So expensive price to pay, expensive lesson to learn, but I'm happy I have, and yeah, it shows in lots of different ways.
That's beautiful. So you've published several books. What are the titles of your?
I've got 2 books out. I've got, the first one was The 7 Primary Chakras, which is just a very short, brief book that doesn't have fluff. It's just dot points and small couple paragraphs about each chakra, of what you can do with it, what colors and sounds and feelings and stuff are associated with that, so you can do some basic healing with it. So if you've done some energy healing, even just a basic Reiki 1 or pranic healing, it gives you a huge understanding of what you can quickly do. Quick reference book. And the second one is questioning skills for IMR hypnosis and the Swan. So the Swan was the thing we did. IMR is idiomotor response hypnosis. So it's just getting finger signals when somebody's in trance. So it's for hypnotherapists or somebody who's doing self-hypnosis with this gift I'm going to give to everybody listening today of being able to do a self-swan, to
Self-swan.
talk to these different parts of themselves to make change.
Yeah, I got to say, like the self-swanning, like that was really cool.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, you have to surrender it, but actually once you've done that, it really does work. Like
It
I
does.
was not moving it. It was
Yeah.
doing its own thing.
I'll have the link that you can put in the show notes, but if you're happy, I can go over it in a couple of minutes here with your audience if they're just driving and
Yeah.
listening, that they can absorb it.
Yeah, let's do it.
And so if you're at home right now, or you're somewhere where you can put an arm up, some people are watching this too, are they?
Yes, they are. Yeah.
So if you're watching, you'll get to see. If you're just listening, I'll try and be as auditory as I can. But put your left arm up so that your elbow is resting on something, and make your hand completely limp, floppy, and free. Your job is to do nothing with it at all, and allow a different part of yourself to connect in with there. So the part of yourself that's got a limiting belief of how much love, joy, and happiness you deserve. Let's go with that to begin with. And ask it to give you a flick of a finger and wait. And you'll notice a little twitch eventually. And then ask it to turn that hand in and around till those fingers are pointing at your face. Now, mine works quite quick because I talk to myself a lot. And it'll turn in. First time I did this, it probably took 10 minutes for mine to turn in. Lots of people, it does it really quick and in a couple of seconds, like mine. And then you say hello to it. And mine says hello back straight away. But generally, the first few times, you've got to ask it to give you a wave, and it will. Quite often, I will use this point to tell it that I love you. Where Kerri's, I didn't give it that opportunity, so it had to really bust out to say that.
It did. It busted out.
Then you ask it to turn back around. Part of this process helps it to connect better into that hand, arm, and fingers. And then you ask it to show you using one of those fingers or the hand how to say yes. And it'll give a flicker or a movement. And you ask it how to say no, maybe, and then I don't know. And then you can ask it questions. Can you help let go of some of my limiting beliefs? Can you raise the cap higher of what joy, love, prosperity in every single way that I can accept and appreciate? Sometimes they'll take a while to think about it. And then you'll either get an agreement or a disagreement and have to find a way in between. Thank you for that. Now just relax control of my hand, arm, and fingers, and away we go. So the first time I ever did this process was just the self-swan part, and developed my therapy skills from there, and then learned how to do it on other people as well. But I remember the first conversation, I was in my head, did I just move that? And you can tell the difference of the feeling, but I was still self-doubted till I asked a question I was expecting a yes to. And I got a no. I'm like, oh. And I thought about it and asked the question slightly differently. And then I got the yes. And the difference I asked then and clarified a different question, asking of the differences between those two. And it was abundantly clear. So my mind was being a little bit more pedantic than I was and going, well, no, not that, but yes, this. So that really helped me know I was tapping into a deeper intelligence, because it was giving me something different to what I expected. And quite often during therapy, people will be surprised at some of the answers that pop out if they're paying attention to what finger's going with what. I seen somebody the other day to get them to do stuff on me, because the downfall with the self-swan is your own limiting beliefs get in the way of what you can do therapy on sometimes, or that self-sabotage will hide the question that you need to ask to make that change from you. So I've got a friend who's a psychologist who I've trained this to, who I see her and she'll do stuff with me sometimes. And so I seen her about something last week, and there was a question she asked, and the answer was way different than I expected. I'm like, really? So it's still surprising years down the track that your subconscious can give different answers than what you expect.
You think you know yourself so well, you find out you don't.
So if anybody wants to watch a little bit deeper version of that, they can go to branchesofhealing.com.au/swan, and there's a video there that will tell them how. That's free. You can just watch.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much for that. And I want to say to everybody, like, I was a little skeptical, I was like thinking the same thing, like, oh, I'm just going to be flicking my own finger. How am I going to know? But I was like, oh, I'm going to trust this because I do the pendulum, right? And I very much trust the pendulum now, because it's like, it does, it moves when it's yes and it stays when it's no, and it's very clear. So I'm like, okay, this is kind of like pendulum. It's just at my body. Yeah. But when it spoke, when I let my little child or whatever subconscious speak out of my throat, it really literally felt like this other little being trying to like reach up to my throat and speak out. I felt like this, some other part of me trying to communicate, trying to bust through that layer and speak. So that was really cool. And it did sound different. It was like, wow.
You can also, if you have trouble speaking,
I get jolted a lot.
You can get it to write. I've had people's swans write things down for me or draw, so it's like automatic writing, but it's something with inside you.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to tap into that subconscious. Well, this is fascinating. I think there's so much in there to explore and so much to realize, so much to know. Just the inner journey, the inner exploration, and really finding out about this vessel we're walking around in, this consciousness we're walking around in, and who he is, who she is, all the aspects. I've been kind of fascinated with like the past lives and like the ascended masters and all of this kind of stuff, but then there's also like this really rich realm of like all the yous that ever were like living inside of you too. That's pretty cool.
And that is it. Yes.
That is so awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lance, for your time and coming on Soul Nectar Show. Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and share our conversation today. And thank you for sharing your gifts with me. I was very, very blessed to receive that.
Same. Thank you. I look forward to having you on Akasha Talks and having a chat with you.
Yes, which is your podcast, which is on iTunes, right?
Yes, that's on. That's everything. It's on iTunes,
it's all over the place.
YouTube, it's every podcatcher.
Yeah, we're excited about that too. So I'll put a link in the show notes for everybody to watch that back and to check out the podcast, and be sure to like and subscribe, on iTunes or YouTube or wherever you find the podcast, because I know I say this every week, but it bears repeating. The more you do that, the more other people can find this who might be a little skeptical, but then it rises up, because of the rankings and everything, it rises up to where they might actually find it. And then that could be the thing that they need to heal, like Lance here. It could be the one thing that they just needed in order to get their life set on the right track. So, like and subscribe and comment. That's gets those engines working for us, right, Lance?
It does. It does.
That's awesome. Well, I like to give people kisses on the way out. So would you like to blow Reiki kisses to everybody?
Sure thing.
Okay, I'm just wanting. So I'm just going to give kisses, and we're going to send everybody out. Thank you guys so much for being for joining in with us today. And here's your kisses. Love you guys. See you next time on Soul Nectar Show. Bye for now.
Bye.